Hi friends, welcome to this latest episode of the Nationalist View, and we have with us a very special guest, Dr. Nina Slama. Nina ji, thank you so much for joining us. Nina ji is with Reichman University, and she is also an international geopolitics expert, especially in context of the Indo-Israel relationship. And we have been talking to her about the ongoing Israel-Hamas war over the last 2 years to take her perspective about the latest developments. Going ahead, now we have this around 20-point plan by United States, which is called the US Peace Plan. Israel has already endorsed it, but Hamas seems to be taking its own time before it endorses this plan. And so we'll have a conversation around what is happening in Gaza right now. And first, about the US 20-point plan. Uh, so how do you look at Nina ji? Is it a feasible plan? What are basic contours of this plan from Israel's perspective, which are important? If you can, emphasize some of these points.
Yes, so thank you first of all for having me, Arun. It's a pleasure to be here. And so we saw the last press conference that was held by President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu regarding this plan. And from an Israeli perspective, Israel accepts the different points of the plan, would like to promote it together with Arab, Muslim, and Muslim countries that also welcome this plan. We're talking about countries such as Turkey, Qatar, Egypt, that are willing to promote this plan to bring to the cessation of the war in Gaza and in other fronts. But we saw that this plan is focusing on Gaza for the time being, and other European countries that also welcome this plan. So we see that there is a broad acceptance and support of this plan when it comes to different countries, not only in West Asia, but also in Europe. Now, as you mentioned, Hamas terrorist organization is taking its own time, and it seems that for the time being, Hamas would like to make some adjustments to some of the points of this plan, because this plan calls for the total disarmament of Hamas terrorist organization. Now, we have to understand that when you're talking about Hamas, there are different branches that comprise this terrorist organization. There is the militant branch, that is most of it is located in Gaza, and there are senior officials of what they call the political branch that mainly reside in Qatar and Turkey. Now, the fact that Qatar and Turkey welcome this plan says a lot about some pressure points that they can promote when it comes to a possible rejection of Hamas terrorist organization of this plan. But the fact that this plan is well accepted by many countries shows the willingness of all these partners to bring to the total end and cessation of combats in Gaza, to bring to the rehabilitation of Gaza and its people, to the total release of all 48 remaining hostages, Israeli hostages that are still held in horrific conditions in Gaza, and to make sure that Hamas and other factions and other jihadist organizations that are operating in Gaza will not pose any further national security threats to the Jewish state. Of course, there are other points that were mentioned there, but this is like the main points that are welcomed by many countries today. We already see that the Palestinian Islamic Jihad rejected this plan, but to be honest, the main actor in Gaza today is Hamas, and this is what we all should focus on to see whether or not they will accept this plan or not. And the US, both the US and Israel said that this plan is not negotiable, is either they are accepting it or not. And if they will not accept it, Israel has the total support of the US to just continue the combat and even escalate them if it is necessary.
That brings to us to another important question, Neena ji, ki that question is Hamas trustworthy? Let's say that they say that, okay, we accept this agreement. But we have known in the past there was a ceasefire also, which happened between Israel and Hamas in between after 2000, after the 2020 through 2023 war began. So there was a period when a truce had happened, and then that ceasefire was broken. Hamas is known to have not honored its commitments. It's a very devious organization, and so. Uh, can do you think Hamas can be trusted? Even if, can they be taken on the face value?
It's
And
a very
who is going to ensure that, they are honoring their commitments?
It's a very important question because we saw in the past that Hamas not only didn't like commit or was able to commit to certain agreements that were signed in the past. Their main objective is to bring to the total destruction of Israel. And it seems from their perspective, that this plan of disarmament do not coincide with their own ideology and interests as a terrorist organization. But they have to understand that if they will continue to conduct the war, there will not be any brigades and battalions that will be able to form what is called today Hamas terrorist organization. Because many of their brigades and chief commanders and senior officials were eliminated by Israel and other partners. So they have to understand that in order to just continue to survive and live, in a very basic way, they should adhere to this plan. And if they will not commit or they will not follow the plan as it is presented, so there are many countries that will be able to pressurize them, naming Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt. And we hope that it will help. One example or one possibility or one option for these countries to pressurize Hamas is to just expel senior officials of Hamas from Qatar and Turkey. And I don't know which country will be willing to host them afterwards because they kind of, um, they are kind of these countries host them and give them a kind of safe haven when it
Actually, they are
comes to the
thankful. Actually,
security.
these countries are thankful to, though on the optics, they might be criticizing, Israel for its actions in Gaza against Hamas. But I believe in the Arab world, so they are more than happy that actually it is Israel basically which is doing their job.
Of course, of course. And this is why all countries have to understand in West Asia, whether they are Arab or Muslim countries or Western countries, that Israel is doing the job of the entire world. This is what has been said when the Operation Rising Lion was promoted by Israel, weakening and dismantling many capabilities of Iran when it comes to ballistic missile threats that could reach many countries in Europe. And of course, the nuclear program of Iran that threatened not only the Jewish state, but also other Arab and Muslim states in West Asia and in other places in the world. So, yes, if you are not supporting Israel, you are supporting terrorism. If you are not supporting Israel, you are supporting barbarism. And if you are not supporting Israel, it could come as a boomerang effect in their own respective countries as well. And these particular countries, Arab and Muslim countries, were and are still fighting factions and organizations that are following the extremist ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood. So, of course, for public, or domestic issues, they should kind of condemn Israel in order to be part of the Muslim and the Arab world. But behind the curtain, I can tell you that they are very thankful that Israel is doing the job.
Now that brings us to another issue that's basically the military strategy of IDF. So of late we have been hearing about this what you call the last opportunity warning for Gaza city residents. So what exactly is this last opportunity warning for Gaza city residents, and how does there is a lot of talk about that IDF has Israeli Defense Forces have created a blockade, which is creating a human crisis. And along with that comes this much hyped flotillas. Basically, they are bunch of ships or boats which have some humanitarian aid or relief material for the residents of Gaza, and they are trying to breach the maritime security or maritime boundary of Israel. So they are being stopped there. I believe 42 ships have already been stopped by Israel, and some activists have also been arrested and they have been deported back. But this process is on. So I want your perspective on two things. One is that exactly what this last opportunity is, and second, that how do you look at this flotillas, which are floating and which are creating a lot of buzz in the international media also, and which are projecting, Israel as something like a Israeli state as an actor which is kind of deliberately creating hunger and other scarcities in Gaza.
So first of all, the idea of the Israel Defense Forces is one of the most moral armies in the world. Israel, as a democratic country, is following the international humanitarian law and is doing everything in its power not to harm uninvolved and civilian population that is residing in Gaza. I can tell you that there is a special branch in the spokesperson unit that is dealing with Arabic messages that are delivered to the Gazan population, calling them through different devices and different means to just leave a certain area in order to go to another safer area so they will not be harmed but by different operations that are occurring in different places in Gaza. But unfortunately, as Israel is combating a jihadist terrorist organization that is not following any rule of law, any humanitarian, international humanitarian law, these terrorists are hiding behind civilians and are operating through civilian infrastructures. We're talking about mosques, about schools, about the residential buildings, houses of civilians that just make it very difficult to the IDF and other Israeli forces to differentiate between involved and uninvolved people. We have to remember that Hamas terrorists are not wearing any uniform, and it's very difficult also to differentiate between them and civilian and the civilian population. Moreover, we know that Hamas is hindering or halting or stopping people to go from a certain area to a safer area in order to use them as human shields. And we saw it from different visuals that are coming from Gaza. And we also have to understand that the figures of the casualties in Gaza, first of all, we don't know if they are accurate or not, because all these figures are coming from Hamas terrorist organization, and they do not differentiate between terrorists and civilian casualties. So we have to be very cautious when it comes to figures or other information that is coming from Gaza, because it's not accurate. It's coming directly from Hamas terrorist organization that has a specific agenda when it comes to its propaganda war and psychological war that is being launched from the beginning of the war against Israel. And we see how it influences different parts of the world. You mentioned the flotillas, for instance. Here in Israel, we're calling them self-flotillas. The only objective of these flotillas is to project and deliver the propaganda of Hamas around the world. I can tell you, you mentioned the 42 ships that were seized by Israeli forces. There were no provisions or medication in these ships. We're talking about more than 400 activists, pro-Palestinian activists, that were there just to make a show, I can tell you that Israel and the IDF are doing everything in their power to provide humanitarian aid to Gaza we're talking about hundreds of trucks that are entering Gaza, being there, and hundreds of trucks that are there. But unfortunately, Hamas terrorist organization is looting all the provisions and medication and other humanitarian aid that is entering Gaza for their own purposes. And we also know about instances where they were selling the provisions in despicable, like an unimaginable prices in order to continue the humanitarian crisis that is part of Gaza. Now, these flotillas, they do not want to bring to an end or the cessation of the war or to bring to the Gaza Strip humanitarian aid, because the IDF and Israel told them that in order to provide this kind of assistance, they should go through the different channels that are acceptable and in which hundreds of trucks are passing through each and every day. I can tell you that there were some visuals in which some of the activists were told to just throw their cell phones while Israeli forces get into the ships. And one can ask himself why they had to throw their phones, to the sea. What kind of information was there that led them to just throw their cell phones? And another important thing that we know is that Hamas funded these kinds of flotillas, and especially the Summit flotilla or the Summit operation, or as they call them. And we can understand that it is something that the terrorist organization is funding in order to weaken even more the image of Israel in the world, leading to mass demonstrations around Europe and across other countries in the world. And, what was devastating is to see that anti-Semitism today in different countries is on the rise. And just recently, the massive terrorist attack that occurred during Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, one of the sacred days in the Jewish calendar, that just was perpetrated in Manchester, the UK, and brought to where two people were killed, and the rabbi was very courageous while he see all the scene of the terrorist attack, entering back to the synagogue, locking it from the inside, and preventing many more casualties from this terrorist attack. So we have to understand that many countries and governments today have to be very cautious when they condemn Israel, where they are inciting or portraying Israel to be a country that is causing genocide. There is no genocide in Gaza. There is a very deplorable situation there, but they have to just turn their criticism to Hamas terrorist organization that not only led to this situation right now in Gaza, but also other ones are still ending Israeli hostages, and as long as there will be Israeli hostages, the war will continue. There will be an intensification of the combats there until they will all be released, and that Hamas terrorist organization and other terrorist organizations in Gaza will not pose any further threat to the state of Israel. And if Hamas would like to bring to a kind of cessation of the war, it should accept the plan of the US.
So my last question is, it's a larger question, probably, later on we'll have a larger debate on this also, discussion on this also. So how do you see the future of Abraham Accords? Nobody is even talking about it. Are they dead, or can they be revived, especially this post-US peace plan which has come to the fore? So we see the Arab world rallying around this plan. There seems to be a possibility again of renegotiating the regional alignments. And as we all are aware that actually one of the key reasons probably Hamas carried out this attack was to derail Abraham Accords, because it was just going to be signed. I think October 7th is a significant date in that sense. So it derailed the whole process of Abraham Accords. So how do you see the possibility of this revival of Abraham Accords?
So as you mentioned, one of the reasons that Hamas terrorist organization decided to launch the October 7 attack was to hinder important developments that occurred in the region, naming the Abraham Accords and the India, Middle East, European corridor, the IMEC project as well. But I can tell you that although we are talking now about the US plan to stabilize and to restore peace and stability when it comes to the Gaza front, there are many talks that are going on between Israel, Lebanon, Syria, and Saudi Arabia. It is true that the October 7 attack allowed the Palestinian issue to become the center of many agendas in the world. But still, there is this willingness of many pragmatic Arab and Muslim countries to restore and to continue the different talks that were able to that were conducted following the Abraham Accords. And I can tell you the fact that Hezbollah was weakened very much in Lebanon allowed Lebanon to open this channel of negotiations. And now with the change of regime in Syria, there is also a possibility there. And of course, Saudi Arabia that has many interests when it comes to IMEC and other projects that they would like to promote. Maybe the fact that there is still an ongoing war in Gaza will influence the negotiations, and then maybe they will condition any kind of development in this regard. They will condition it to the stabilization and rehabilitation of Gaza. But I can tell you that there are many interests that are coming from different partners, not only in West Asia, but also in Europe and the US, to cess all of hostilities and to continue the very positive developments that occurred following the Abraham Accords. So for now, there is a kind of cautious optimism when it comes to the continuation of these talks. But I can tell you that behind the curtains, there are many talks and negotiations that are taking place in order to see how they can continue to promote these positive developments.
One last question. It's a hypothetical situation. You may choose not to answer it. But let's say that this 20-point plan or this US peace plan, it doesn't get acceptance from Hamas, or somehow it doesn't get implemented. So as Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has categorically said that Israel will continue with its operations, and it will hunt down basically all the terrorists, and it will finish off Hamas from Gaza. 70%, more than 70% of the Gaza has already been cleaned by the Israeli Defense Forces. Or we can say that they control now almost 70% of the Gaza, or probably even around 80% or so. How much time? Because now this will be the last bastion of Hamas, and of course they are going to put all their resources, whatever is at their disposal, to fight back. So it's a hypothetical situation, though. But if that happens, how do you think? Do you think that the war is going to prolong for, probably another year or so? Or will Israel, given its firepower and being backed by US, so it can take the rest of the Gaza, the 20, 25, 30% of the Gaza over, say, how much time it will take for the Israeli Defense Forces to do that?
So it will depend whether there will still be hostages there or not. Because the fact that there are hostages in Gaza didn't allow the Israeli forces to go forward and just demolish a Hamas terrorist organization. I can tell you that Hezbollah was a much more significant terrorist organization when it comes to capabilities, means, and Israel was able to weaken it very much. But the fact that they are Israeli hostages in Gaza make it very difficult for Israel to go forward. It is a strategic asset, and they understood it from the very beginning. And there will be an intensification if Hamas terrorist organization will not accept this plan. that is supported by many countries around the globe. So Israel will have carte blanche, or an open way to just continue the combats, demolish a Hamas terrorist organization, and hopefully make to the release of all Israeli hostages. But then afterwards, there will be a lot of work to do in Gaza, a lot of reconstruction projects, a lot of reforms when it comes to radicalization, the de-radicalization of the population that has been held hostage. The Gazan population are held hostage by Hamas terrorist organizations for many years. And just to open a new chapter in the Gaza Strip with the collaboration of many countries that are very willing to support it, to fund it, and even to build it in different stages. It will take time, but for now, what is important is to stabilize the region, to see how the war can end, because as long as the war is ongoing, it is very difficult to just promote this kind of important steps in turning Gaza into a better place for the Gazan population.